Hi, everybody. My name is Jonathan Fisher, and welcome today to today's episode of the Pacific Northwest Railroad Archive bi-weekly Zoom meeting. I'm glad that everybody is here today, and on a cold and dreary last day of January, it's a nice day to stay inside and we'll warm our hearts talking about trains. So I just want to kind of talk about our calendar coming up. We've got a number of events on the PNRA and related organizations programming. And yeah, unfortunately, I don't know why that is a problem. So anyway, I'm going to just talk quickly about some of the programs that we've got coming up. February 14th, we're going to have one of our favorites from PNRA and the Tacoma chapter of the NRHS, Mike Bergman, on our program, and he's going to be talking about the bridges of Seattle and the Seattle streetcars and the bridges that they use to get to West Seattle. On February 28th, past president of the PNRA board, Bob Kelly, will be with us, and Bob will be talking about the history of Stevens Pass. Now, Bob is a real expert on this, so this is going to be a really great program, and that's going to be on February 28th. March 9th, Cascade Rail Foundation is working with the Dungeness River Nature Center, North Olympic Peninsula Historical Society, PNRA, and some other institutions, and we're going to have an all-day seminar at SWIM on railroading of the Olympic Peninsula. We're going to have Steve Hoff on. He's going to talk about the history of the railroads. Alan Miller will talk about the Milwaukee Road legacy. We're going to talk about Restore the Four, which is one of the few surviving Willamette locomotives left that's on display in a park in Port Angeles. And then we'll have a reunion of Seattle and North Coast employees. So it should be a fun day. March 13th, thanks to Trent. Trent, I appreciate your help. Trent's on the program. Friends of the Washington Park Zoo will be on, talking about extending their tracks back to what they belong. March 24th, Gordon Glattenberg will be on a Sunday night at 5 p.m. Pacific time, and we will be looking at his extensive collection of railroad photographs from Canada. A lot of that will be steam in color, so it's going to be just great. March 27th, we have the past president of the Oregon Rail Heritage Center as our guest, home of the 700, 44, 49, so on and so forth. New guest to our program, so that will be very exciting, and I'm really looking forward to that. We've got some other programs coming up. Trent is on April 10th, assuming Trent figures out what program he's going to do. And April 24th, two of my favorite people, Jack Christensen and Gary Tarbox, are going to be collaborating on a live presentation from the Highline Heritage Museum, and we'll be talking about Jack's legacy on the Northern Pacific and some of his experiences on the Burlington Northern. So, like I say, we've got a lot of really neat programming coming up, and it's just a lot of fun. So at this point, we've got two guests on our program today. First, we're going to talk to Steve Howes about the progress that Sumter Valley is making on the creation of their archive in Sumter, Oregon. And then we will be tap dancing our way around American Morse code with the Reverend Dr. Douglas Oakman. So first over to Steve. And Steve, tell us about the progress you nice folks are making out there in Sumter. Go ahead, please.
Well, hello, everyone. We've reached what I consider to be a very significant milestone in our organization. Sumter Valley Railroad in its current iteration was chartered back in 1971. So it's taken us 52 years, but we finally reached the point where we're going to have a completed standalone archives building at our McEwen site, which we plan to start occupying sometime this spring. It's essentially complete. and it's entirely paid for. And our archives building, which I'm going to show you in a little bit, it's been done with an investment by our organization of approximately $300,000. So with that, I'm going to see if I can show you a few slides here.
Yeah, let's see what you got.
Hang on just a moment here.
I don't think anybody's got any urgency today, right, folks? Here we go.
All right.
From beginning.
Yep. There we go. All right, this is the archives building. These photographs were taken on January 20th. So the exterior of the building is essentially complete. There's just a few minor things that have left to be done. As you can see, we need to paint the supports for the front porch. We're going to be painting the bollards along the west side of the building to paint them red with some reflective striping to keep other equipment from running into the building at night. As you can see, again, the roof and siding, everything is complete. The HVAC is on the interior has all been completed. We're just waiting now for our electrical contractor to do the electrical trim out, and everything will be done. One final thing that has to be done also is we have to have our engineer do the survey on the floor. We had to complete a floodplain analysis and make sure the floor was above the floodplain or located properly. The photo on the right.
For an archive.
Yeah, that is. I want to go back just a little bit. We were fortunate, like in a way. We received the proceeds from the home sale of Ron Haar and Sumter, and that got this project started. We got $150,000 from that. It was part of that went to the initial design of the building, and getting an estimate for what we thought the building would take to complete construction. We were hoping we could do most of it for the $150,000, but as you know, prices have increased and things are a lot more expensive. And it turned out that the building was going to cost upwards of $260,000. The railroad, SVRR Incorporated, decided that we'd waited around long enough to get the building completed, so they put up $120,000. We still didn't have enough to complete the building, and we were able to get the additional funds through a few grants that we got, and donations, monetary donations, donations of books and model railroad equipment that we sold, things like that. So we were able to, as I said, the building is now completely paid for, which is a big milestone in my estimation. The photo on the right shows what you'd see kind of when you walk in the front door. The building is in total 20 by 40 feet. It's got a concrete floor, and this is the north wall back here. And there you can see the front door, metal door. We still have to do the threshold here, rekey the lock, and do a deadbolt on the back room where all of our historic equipment or photographs, maps, and library will be. And then this is the entryway to the secure room in the back. And you can see the electrical work still needs to be completed, but light fixtures added, just a few minor things, and we'll be ready to go. I I talked to our archivist, Brett Bain, the other day, and he said he's going to start moving some of our materials from Enterprise down to the McEwen site probably in March. So that whole process it'll take us a while, but it's a start, and we're looking forward to getting everything into one spot where we can have access and to use it in some of our historic education and preservation work. We do have a 9-person archives committee. A couple of our folks that you probably have heard of, George Hardy and Martin Hansen, are on our committee. And they've been active all along in helping us get through this process. One other thing I kind of wanted to mention here is this is our car shop at McEwen, and it's kind of, as you can see, it's not the most photogenic building. It's kind of an eyesore, but it does have a bit of historical significance for us. It was the first building that was built at our site in McEwen. It was actually built in Baker City in 1971 with donated lumber from the Ellingson Lumber Company, and it was built to house the W.H. Eccles Heisler number 3 when it was going through the restoration work when they brought it to Baker City. When they actually moved the operation up to McEwen in, I believe, 1975 or 1976, it was taken apart, rebuilt, and it became the engine shed for the number 3. And that was the only building at the site, actually, other than the McEwen Depot, when I started working on the for the railroad back in 1988. At that time, it had tracks through the building, gravel floor. It has slide doors on each end and a slide door on the side. Given a number of close encounters over the year with locomotives that couldn't stop or shoving cars up into the shop and not having the garage doors or the shop doors open like they should have been. It's getting to the point where the doors can hardly be opened. So also probably about 12 to 15 years ago, we did do some work. We got a grant to pave the floor and partially insulate the building. And we just recently approved $25,000 to put new roll-up doors on each end and get the doors so they work properly, and get the building tightened up so we could seal it off a little more. It's partially insulated. We'd like to get the building completely insulated, put a ceiling on the inside with improved lighting, siding on the building. This little appendage over here will be taken off, and hopefully we'll have another area where we can work on equipment, primarily rolling stock, in a heated area all winter long, and we don't have to move cars in and out of the back shop where the locomotives are currently located. Again, you can see this is the north side of the building here. It's located on the original Y that was built at McEwen. And then the rear door or south door here, this is one of our SP narrow gauge box cars that we purchased several years ago, and we'd like to get started work on restoring them. Has close proximity to the new archives building. So if we do start doing any restoration work in this building, we can easily take people and from the archives over to the building and show them the shop work that's going on. And then finally, one of the last things we hope to get done this coming year is to extend the track in Sumter. 50 50 to 80 feet. The track goes on the other side of this building. This is the Sumter Depot. And we want to add some additional track on this end of the line so we can accommodate longer trains for special events and not block the crossing here on Austin Street. And you can see here the kind of winter conditions that we have to deal with up there.
Looks like you've had some snow this year, Steve.
We did have some snow, but I don't think it's as bad as it's been in past years. It's a snowy place.
Where's this located?
This is located, Sumter is about 28 miles southwest of Baker City, Oregon. And if you don't know where that is, okay.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah. And McEwen is about 5 miles away. So we have a 5 mile long, little over 5 mile long railroad.
Thank you. Yeah.
Which started out as just
I'm
a
sorry?
trail. I mean, it's amazing what you guys have done over the years in restoring this railroad. It's quite impressive.
Yeah, when I started working there, the shop, that building that I showed you with the gravel floor, that was the only building that we had to work out of. And the railroad had just crossed Highway 7. And so, yeah, I was there from not quite the start, but close.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing this. You know, the Sumter Valley has always had a narrow gauge steam railroad in Oregon. That always has a soft spot in my heart. And I always look forward to hearing from you guys and get a chance to help you guys share your story and raise awareness about what a great little railroad you guys have.
Well, one thing, I was talking to Brett the other day, and one thing we talked about, and possibly an idea for a future presentation to this group would be a before and after tour of the line, where we show what things look like today and what they look like in the past between here and Prairie City. So
that'd be great. Yeah, we'll look forward to that, you know, maybe for this fall. You guys can organize. Let me know.
All right.
All right. Thanks, Steve. And we're going to go to Doug Oakman, but I realized in the news section where I was covering the events that I missed one of the events, very important event. Jim Trenzo, what event do we have in March?
Oh, well, we have the Pacific Northwest chapter meeting of the PRTNHS.
Which is what?
The Pennsylvania Railroad Technical and Historical Society.
So is that a friend of yours standing on that locomotive behind you?
Oh, this was the 1939 World's Fair. Let me slide out of the way. It's kind of a funny picture. I don't particularly know what they were trying to do here, but here we have a woman waving on the front of the only S1 locomotive ever built, 6446. And there's a guy in a, looks like Henry Ford's original car trying to beat it.
It's interesting what these folks come up with for backgrounds. You know, I just rely on my secret Santa back here, my snowman, and I'm just, you know, I'm just winging it from my office. So thank you very much, Jim. Now, after much ado, I am very excited to turn our presentation over to our guest speaker today, the Reverend Dr. Douglas Oakman. So no more tapping around on things. Doug, take it away.
Well, thank you. I'm very honored and happy to be here at Jonathan's invitation to talk about what Mark Borleski and I have wondered, whether an enthusiasm or a passion. I can't decide which, but I'm going, and what I have to say coming up here, you can decide yourselves. So my title, Milwaukee Telegraph Docent, will be explained as we go along, and how I came to do this at the age of 70. Of course, you can see how young I look, right? Don't laugh. I want to begin by some thank yous, particularly to colleagues in the Morse Telegraph Club, of which I am a member, and that would include Kevin Seville, our president, Gary Emmons, under whose good influence I was attracted to join the Morse Telegraph Club, and Ed Bernstein, who has been a real help to me, Mark Borleski, a very good friend now, and really something of an inspiration as a docent at the Milwaukee Railroad Station in South Clay Island, Washington. Les Kerr, who wrote the software Morse KOB, which I'll talk about later in my presentation. Also, Alan Miller, who allowed me to photograph 50 of his green tissue train orders from Clay Elum. And then in the Cascade Rail Foundation, Mary Pittis, who encouraged me as a docent, a new docent, and I've only been doing it for a little under a year. And finally, Jonathan Fisher of the Cascade Rail Foundation, who invited me to talk about this. So, for me, it began at a very young age. My maternal grandparents lived in Johnston Station, Iowa, just north of Des Moines. Some of you may know where that is. Along the Des Moines and Central Iowa Railroad, which was an interurban to begin with, and a part of my growing up from a very early age. On my paternal grandparents' side, living in Bushnell, Illinois, on the CB and Q, memories of that beautiful train that would go through on a regular basis, that stainless steel CB and Q led by an E5 or an E6. Those memories have stayed with me all my life and made me a lifelong rail fan. My father was a journalist. He loved newspapering, but in the 60s, because of his growing family, he had to become a PR man. And from 1965 to 1970, he was a PR man for Collins Radio in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. There, I acquired a strong interest in electronics, and I built a 3-tube shortwave radio, and my love for radio was to continue as well. I went off to the University of Iowa, and I became a humanist, and I didn't think too much about radio during those years until I came back to acquiring a scanner radio when my family moved up here, when I joined the faculty at Pacific Lutheran University. Along the way, I was ordained in the Association of Evangelical Lutheran Churches, and became a Lutheran pastor in what's now called the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. I'm now a retired minister of Word and Sacrament. Well, a few years ago, due to Gary Emmons, with whom I became acquainted through ham radio, I was licensed as a ham first in 2002, and to do it right, I taught myself International Morse code and passed the code test just barely, 5 words a minute. And I sat next to Gary at the emergency radio meetings that I was going to, and he got me interested in learning American Morse on a sounder and in joining the Morse Telegraph Club, which I did a few years back. I'm going to share my screen now. This is me and my wife, Debbie, at a much younger age, as you can tell. And we had a marriage that lasted 46 years. However, she acquired Alzheimer's, and she died a year ago. So in part, I know she would have liked me to do this presentation and to explain something about my being a docent in South Cle Elum. In October of 2022, Debbie and I went over to join Mark Borleski at the Milwaukee station there, and Mark and I were talking about installing a Morse code exhibit. And the minute I had joined the Morse Telegraph Club, I was immediately elected vice president, even though I knew very little about railroad telegraphy, although I began to learn quickly from all the good people in that club. And Debbie and I saw the beautiful Iron Horse State Park, and we went around the interpretive trail as Mark and I worked that day. And when Debbie had stated her last wishes to me in a written form, due to our love of rail travel, and we had written trains in the United States as well as in Europe. We had written trains many times, and in retirement, we had hoped to ride trains to see our grandchildren. She didn't live to see the fulfillment of that, but I have already started to fulfill it. But while I was there at the Iron Horse State Park, I remember that she wanted to have her ashes scattered on railroad tracks, and the light bulb went on. Where a better place for her to rest than there at the Iron Horse State Park? And as a consequence, I became a volunteer as a docent at the museum. So I have several reasons to return there as long as I may live. As I've said, here is the South Cle Elum, Washington sign of the Milwaukee Railroad, Cle Elum, as they just simply called it. I learned that the Northern Pacific ran through Cle Elum to the north of the Yakima, and that the Milwaukee Railroad had run through here. I was also very much interested in the electrification of the railroad, over 640 miles of electrification, which was really an amazing thing for its day. Finished in 1920 from Othello to Tacoma, Washington, and then later up to Seattle. So very much an interest in a lot of ways as a docent at the museum, and trying to anticipate questions people might ask me. What did I know about this place, about the railroad that had run through here, about the motors that had replaced steam, the original Malays, the compound steam locomotives, 2662s, didn't work so well in the mountains, but the motors, the EF1s and so on, were amazing machines, and not only could pull, but coming down the mountain could regenerate energy back into the grid system. Here is the substation at Cle Elum, and work is being done to re-energize the ABS signal lights as well. Many of you will recognize this scene. And 2 sessions ago, Frank Zellerhoff had a wonderful discussion of what went on inside the substation there. In his day, from 100,000, it went up to 115,000 volts AC, transformed to 2,300 volts for the motor generator sets to turn the AC motor, which in turn turned the 2 1,500 volt DC generators. Mark will well recognize this. This is what our exhibit there looked like to begin with. We have in the corner of the operator's office a laptop, and through the magic of Les Kerr's software, Morse KOB 2.5, the software allows a sounder and to be run from the software, as well a Morse key. Here we have it, one of those in the picture, to enter letters and words to learn how to do American Morse code, about which I'll talk about more in a little bit. The software operates through a simple solid state switch, which is enclosed in this box here, and an RS-232 cable is cut, and 4 wires are used, 2 for the sounder, which is powered externally, and 2 for the key for input. The software has 3 major functions, and can, as you will see in a moment, can reproduce a text file on the screen and on the sounder simultaneously, or can accept input from a telegraph key to learn how to send. And if Wi-Fi or the internet is available, can receive live news feeds off the internet, or can allow operators to talk to one another over the internet using American Morse or even International Morse code. International Morse code developed out of American Morse code, which was the original, developed in the 1840s. We'll have more to say about that in a little bit. This is a large screen monitor at Cle Elum, which had the office call, as you see, CM, did it, did, da, da. That was the American Morse for CM, did it, did, da, da. I also installed some slideshows on the computer that can also display on the large screen monitor. This is the operator's desk. The telegraph operator would sit here. Over here is an old typewriter. It would have been either a typewriter or an all caps mill. A selector box that will allow the selection of different wires to the telegraph. A couple of telegraph instruments here. This was the dispatcher's phone, and from the very beginning in 1909, train orders were sent over the phone, and the telegraph was used as a backup. I talked with Alan Miller about this, and he confirmed that. As you see here, this is called a resonator. It's a wooden box, and the sounder itself. And operators usually could enhance the sound of their sounder using very frequently a Prince Albert tin can like this. If you had several sounders in a busy office, this would allow the operator to pick their particular call out of the noise. Okay. I'm going to now switch to 2 short videos here before I let me switch screens here. Okay. This is the Morse being conveyed over the big screen monitor. These are the actual train orders that I transferred from Helen Miller's copies over into a text file. Many of you there will recognize some of the aspects of the order form: copies to the conductor and engineer, number of copies, train numbers, and then the orders. These are all 19 orders. The 3 initials of the dispatcher. And then CM. There's CM. And then dispatch, DS. Now this short video shows the Morse KOB in operation. And all the connections that make the magic happen. The sounder in operation. And the 2 instruments we'll talk about in just a bit. Okay, I'm back on the screen. We stopped our share. Is everybody with me still here? Okay, I'm going to talk about now the Morse code itself. Created by Samuel Morse and Alfred Vail in the 1840s. Morse 1791 to 1872, Vail 1807 to 1859. And the very first commercial message that was sent, there were trial runs before this, was in May of 1844, a quotation from the Bible: "What hath God wrought?" Now the instruments that we were looking at just a moment ago are part of a very simple technology. And when I do the train shows, people come up and they want to know about this. I say 4 main ingredients. You have a simple switch, as you can see here. This is not, this is a key that was made. It's a Morse telegraph key, or a straight key, created around the World War II era. So it's not of great antiquity, but very simple construction. A spring-loaded switch is what it is, and with contacts here, so open and shut. The Morse system in the United States was a closed circuit system, and the 4 main ingredients: the switch to send, a wire between stations, usually made of iron, suspended on telegraph poles on glass insulators, a battery, and the sounder. And the return of the circuit was the ground itself. That was early determined. that you didn't need two wires. All you need is the one. And then the ground was the return wire. In addition, I don't have I don't have a complete one, but this was an electromechanical relay. And the sounder was essentially two electromagnets pulling that beam up and down. And those are the basic ingredients of a very effective technology. What the electromechanical relay allowed was for a very, very weak Morse pulsing on the wire to be detected out to even 300 miles. And then that would close circuits here in the relay to energize a local circuit that ran the sounder. So I call it an electromagnetic amplifier. Another technological invention was the speed key. This is a vibraplex. It has a manufacturer's mark that shows it was made in 1944. Two major manufacturers then of telegraph equipment. Jesse Bunnell, who lived 1843 to 1899, he learned telegraphy before the Civil War, and then during the Civil War was a very effective communicator to support troop movements and the like. And they had ways of extending out in the field wire and then telegraph instruments. These were usually run out of a wagon. And our Morse Telegraph Club president, Kevin Seville, actually built his own covered wagon, uses zinc copper batteries, and stretches a telegraph wire, demos these at Civil War reenactments. Horace Martin, who lived 1873 to 1939, invented the vibraplex here because telegraphers in the 19th century, sending at a rapid rate on a straight key, would get carpal tunnel syndrome from doing the up and down very rapidly, and they called it glass arm. So he, being an expert telegrapher, invented the speed key. I don't have it hooked up, but when you press the lever this way, this arm bounces on contacts with a spring, and then you make the dits that way, and you have to be good at your timing to get 3 or 4 or 5, and then the das, da, the two basic elements of Morse code. So part of what people want to know from me is how the telegraph was used with the railroad. And obviously there's a little bit of a historical inaccuracy at the museum in Clay Island, because the telephone was used all the way from 1909 to when the road went defunct in 1980. But there are mysteries of telegraphers that I want to talk a little bit about, and then how the telegraph was used with train orders. First of all, back in the Midwest, I learned this just the other day, and talked with Ed Birdston about it. But an article that Mark shared with me, the telegrapher who was on the Omaha Railroad said there were four levels of telegraphers, according to this operator. at the bottom were the first years, the freshmen or fresh women, and they were called tyros. And interestingly, Ed and I talked about this. The word tyro comes from Latin, T-I-R-O, meaning a new military recruit. The next level up were the hams, from which I believe we get the word ham radio, because in the early days of wireless telegraphy, ham radio operators weren't very good. And the professional telegraphers kind of said that pejoratively, okay? Next were the telegraphers, and then at the top were the brass pounders. Out in the West Coast, I think things were a little simpler. There were the apprentices and the experienced people. But in any case, I'm probably truly a ham, although I've worked on international Morse for 20 years, and I use it. But learning to hear Morse code, whether on the radio in tone-based Morse or on a sounder, takes a lot of practice, because you have to hear it, and you have to begin to hear words, not just letters. And that takes practice, practice, practice. Interestingly, the order of radio telegraphers came into being in the 19th century because telegraphers felt they needed better working conditions. Often they had to work very long hours, and they formed a union. This was first organized by a man in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, by the name of Ambrose Thurston, who lived 1852 to 1913. And the order of radio, what am I trying to say? The order of railroad telegraphers, there we go, lasted up into the 1980s. There were mergers in the 60s and then in the 70s and 80s, until finally there's one large organization now for communicators in the railroads. So the station operator, telegrapher, had four main duties. Obviously, to issue tickets, and similarly to receive train orders. But they also would have to deal with freight, and they would have to perhaps deal with commercial traffic. Alan Miller informed me that originally the Milwaukee Railroad had its own consolidated Continental Telegraph Company, only later to be replaced by Wells Fargo. I'm sorry, to be replaced by Western Union. They partnered with Wells Fargo for Express. These are matters that probably Mark could speak to even better if we have a little time. In any case, I've been delving into the mysteries of train orders over the telegraph or over the telephone. And to keep things simple for people in the museum or at the train shows, the timetable and authority to be on certain section of track were, and the rules of operation were of ultimate importance for safety. The bottom line was default fail safe. So if a signal failed, it had to fail so that everything stopped. If the battery failed, the semaphore had to go to stop. If the light was out, it meant fail safe stop. So in the initial running, the first train order was issued in, as far as I can see, 1851, and in the eastern part of the United States. And so train orders and timetables went together. And the timetable initially specified when trains would be at a certain place. The two trains could not be at the same place at the same time, nor at the same time at the same place, for obvious reasons of physics. So the timetable originally then was accompanied and complemented by the train order. And telegraphers had to be placed fairly frequently along the line so that the dispatcher would know where trains were at a certain time, and whether train orders were needed to be issued to make sure that certain trains were in the siding at the right time. So rules governed trains on a timetable in direction or by class. And the pecking order was a train order that was issued, if a train order was issued to supersede the timetable, it conveyed superiority by right. So right was more important than either direction or class. Ed informed me that here in Washington State, the superior direction was eastward. And then, of course, passengers were first class, extras were the lowest class. And that was the hierarchy of the train superiority. And of course, very important to know who had the right of the way and when you had to be stopped. Furthermore, initially there were two kinds of orders, 19 and 31. 19 orders didn't require signatures and could allow the train to just keep moving. And there was an order board at the telegrapher's office that would tell the train whether it had to stop or whether it had an order to pick up on the fly. And members of our club who actually dispatched on the Northern Pacific talk about how interesting it was to hoop an order up when you had to hold it up with a bamboo hoop. Of course, most of you would know about this. The train order attached to the bamboo hoop, the engineer catches one, the conductor catches the second, the hoops are thrown out of the train. And at the train shows, I would tell people coming by where we had a hoop there, don't be on bad terms with the engineer. Otherwise, they will take the hoop a mile away and throw it out there. Obviously, you don't want to have to walk 2 miles to get the hoop back. The 31 order required a stop because the conductor had to sign the order and often as well the engineer. And that was a very restrictive place where the train, for some reason, had to just stay there until given proceed orders. Anyway, one last note there, and I have seen these, the sheets that were in the operator's office. When a train passed by, the time was noted on sheet, OS, did it. And that's O and S in American Morse code. The two codes relate in a way I'll explain here in a second, but there is a lot of lore in Morse telegraphy from the 1840s on into the radio days, wireless telegraphy. And I'll just mention a couple of people here. Thomas Edison, 1847 to 1931, learned telegraphy because he rescued a little kid off of the railroad tracks who was playing on the tracks when a railroad train was approaching. And the father, who was the operator at that place, was so grateful that he taught Thomas Edison telegraphy, and Edison became very good. This is probably an apocryphal story, but it's said that when Edison was a newly minted telegraph operator, they placed a very experienced operator on the other end to test how good he was. So the other operator started out at a very slow rate, and Edison copied just fine. And the other operator, wanting to haze him, kept getting faster and faster and faster, and Edison kept up. And finally, the guy on the other said, "I give up." And Edison telegraphed back, "When are you going to stop sending with your left foot?" Bad operators were called lids, L-I-D-S, and they still are in ham radio. Edison, interestingly, invented a way of sending multiple messages on a single wire. He invented a duplexing system where two signals could be going one way and two signals going the other way at the same time on a single wire. This was called quadplexing, but a form of duplexing. And this was before electronics. This was still using simple electromagnetic systems. Ted McElroy was a famous telegrapher before World War II. He had a company that actually manufactured McElroy keys, which are collectors' prizes. He was the first person to copy Morse code over 50 words a minute. And later in contests, he copied it up to 77 words a minute. There was a fellow at the train show the other day, and he worked for Western Union. I said, "Well, what were your sending and receiving speeds?" "I sent," he said, "at 29 words a minute. I received at 19. And I said, "Well, what's the lowest speed of a teletype?" He said 60 words a minute and up. So McElroy was something else, right? Now, I'm getting to the end of this, but as you know, Nikola Tesla and Marconi in the 1890s invented basic elements of wireless radio. Tesla tuned circuits, Marconi understanding antennas. And of course, Marconi was a better businessman, and Marconi operations were on shipboard in the early 20th century. International Morse then was developed because American Morse had what were called space letters. A space letter is a letter where there's a space between some dits. Dit is C. Dit is O. And the acronym is Cory and Z. C-O-R-Y ampersand and Z, all are space letters. Well, these did not translate well into wireless telegraphy. And also there were developments in Europe. So an international code emerged, very similar to American Morse code, but different in several ways. No space characters, and then certain letters were moved. There were some transpositions of letters and some transposition of punctuation. So a C in international on the radio is da-de-da-de, but it is a J in American Morse code. A period in American Morse code, did-it-da-da-did-it, is the question mark in international code. And as I have worked on my American Morse, I found that what Gary Emmons said is true. Your brain can keep them separate, but really good if you listen to the international in tone base as you hear it on the radio, or you listen to American on the sounder. The first word you learn in either code is the, da, did, did. And you hear that very easily, but you really begin to make progress when you start to hear the words themselves. And also in American Morse telegraphy in the railroad station, operators used a lot of abbreviations. And so their rate of sending could be very much higher with abbreviations, okay? Finally, a final note, it has to do with what people asked me at the docent's table. Well, I used to be in the Boy Scouts, or well, I was in the military, and all I ever learned was SOS. Did it, da, 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 did it. In the early days of wireless, the first use of SOS was not on the Titanic, but on a ship that was going down, called the Slavonia in 1909. The Marconi distress signal was CQD, and the Titanic's call sign was MGY. But the Marconi operators on the Titanic initially sent CQD. Da 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 did it. But then they also used SOS. And of course the Carpathia didn't get there in time. So I'll let it be there and see if anybody wants to add some footnotes or make a question about anything that I could possibly talk about.
So I saw one question that came up in the chat, and that was from our friend Trent. And Trent said, what voltage on batteries were used for telegraphy for field work?
Well, that's a good question. Usually the zinc copper battery, which had copper sulfate in it called bluing, would generate about 1.5 volts. And then they would be put together in series for a higher voltage, but probably around 10 volts. So
Okay.
however many. I was talking to Kevin Seville, who actually uses these kinds of batteries in his Civil War enactments. And he said 10 volts seems to have been sort of a commonplace among station batteries. But that's a good question.
So Gary Tarbox has got his hand up, and then we've got another question in the chat. Gary, go ahead, please.
So when I was in Baltimore, where the railroads first started on the North American continent, the first mile left the roundhouse, and then I was told on the tour that that was also the first mile of the telegraph.
Yeah,
And
you're
you're
right.
saying, yeah, you're saying that it was started in 44. Wasn't it railroad related at that point?
No, 1844.
Yeah, 1844, excuse me.
It was transmitted, from my memory, it was transmitted from Washington, D.C. to a station on the Baltimore and Ohio. So yes, I'm pretty sure you're right.
But then you said the train orders weren't communicated until 51.
Yeah, 1851, I believe, on the Erie Railroad. So there you go.
Now Ed, I know there's a question in the chat, but Ed, you were shaking your head up and down. Could you clarify that for us while we're on the thought, please, Ed? You have to unmute, Ed.
I do some of my best work on mute. So the telegraph system it's the urban legend, not ever disputed that I've heard, was that an Erie superintendent or superintendent on the Erie Railroad was frustrated at some point on his line between Jersey City and Chicago in 1851. I've heard other years, but we'll go with 1851. And that the train he was on was delayed because a superior train in the opposite direction hadn't shown up on schedule. And it was getting later and later, and the superintendent's train had to get going because he had to get someplace. So he had the telegraph operator at the station he was holding at with his inferior train by direction send a telegram to the next station down the line where they verified that westbound or that opposing superior train had not passed yet, which is critical. That's what the OS comment is on sheet, or is one version of it. The physical reporting of passage of trains at each station was a critical function of the telegraph operators. So the dispatcher knew where his trains were. And so that he could restrict a train at a station if it had not gone by. So this superintendent instructed on his own motion to this station telegraph operator where the opposing train had not yet passed to hold that train until we get there, or words to that effect. And that is alleged to be the first telegraphic train order.
And I would add, thank you, Ed. We talked about this, but CTC, direct train control are going to make telegraph offices obsolete. And nowadays, of course, if you listen to the dispatchers on the radio, it's direct train control with track warrants.
So our next question in the chat comes from our friend Jim Trenzo in East Wenatchee, Washington. How is a message sent a long way? Do the operators repeat it at intervals? Now, Jim, do you mean that I've got a really long message and I'm doing the whole thing, or am I trying to get a message from Boston to Los Angeles?
It would be the latter. If you're using a DC circuit, there's going to be line loss, and over some interval, the message is not strong enough anymore. So if you were going to send, say, from Boston to New York, could you do it in one fell swoop, or would you transmit it to the next operator down the line, and then so on and so on?
Well, just to go back, the electromechanical relay here was part and parcel of that solution of that out to 300 miles. And then the message would have to be reinvigorated, so to speak. But I think for telegraph on the railroad, the distances to the dispatchers were not so long, but maybe on Western Union, yeah. That's a good question.
So
But technically though, Jim, the electromechanical relay allowed for long distance transmission, 300 miles.
I was reminded of the game kids play called Telegraph, where you say the same message to 6 people and it's entirely different at the other end.
Yeah, well, in train order work, though, that message had to be repeated verbatim to the dispatcher from the operator. And then the dispatcher would say, fulfilled, okay, it's now in effect. So there were what I would call parity checks built in. And then, of course, once that order is in effect, the engineer and conductor have to observe it meticulously. Otherwise, we have a misfortune on the tracks.
So our next,
Railroads also had relay offices, didn't they, to go for longer distances?
I'm seeing some heads nodding in agreement.
Yeah, I think especially centralized dispatching, but that's something that Ed and Gary and Jim Frederickson and others did here in the local area.
So we've got a bunch of good questions queuing up for you guys in the chat here. The next one, and I've got one from Trent, one from Joel, and then one from our friend Dave Johnson. So the next one from Trent, is it true that telegraphy was first used on the Pacific Northwest along the portage railroads on the Columbia River?
I don't know.
Ed. I don't see Ed now. I must have lost Ed. Daniel Cozine, do you know the answer?
Well, I have some telegrams from 1877, 78 from the Oregon Steam Navigation Company, that was tied in with that. So they must have had, and they're from the Secretary of the Treasury. So they must have had some connection. You know, on a portage railroad, what would you need? You know, like train orders, but they handled that kind of thing more subjects rather than train orders, just like Western Union kind of thing. So that's part
Okay,
of it.
thank you for that, Daniel. And then Joel McCurry wanted to know, were the codes for the letters chosen for efficiency? Most used letter had a short code, least used letter had a long code? Or was there, how did they optimize that?
That's an excellent question. I can say in general, yes. E is the most familiar vowel in the English language, so it gets the dit. T must be very frequent, so it gets the da. Z, of course, did it space dit. So I'm not sure beyond the most frequent letters how true that was as far as American Morse. I know it's true for the shorter stuff because I think Vail did very detailed statistical studies of the English language to kind of ascertain, all right, what should we assign what?
Great. Now, as I'm looking at my camera at our audience today, I'm looking at our friend Dave Johnson, who says he has a couple of comments. But Dave, is that some sort of Morse code on your desk? Is that a key of some sort there, sir?
Yeah, and I had some comments about that.
Go right ahead. You got the floor.
Fortunately or unfortunately, my dad was a telegrapher all his life. Started out on the Q and he ended up 27 years on the Great Western, and he drugged me around railroad offices and stations and stuff like that. And so I ended up with a lot of stuff, and I've kind of got it breadboarded here, but I have a complete setup. I was going to say, as far as the circuit go, well, first of all, a good presentation. But as far as setting up a circuit, for example, if you wanted to set up a line from Chicago to Omaha, the way they did that is you'd start out with Chicago and you would run a wire into the first station. And I think normally they kept track of, they numbered the wires, you know, like maybe 14. And so at a particular depot, you'd have a East 14 and a West 14. And that's why at a telegrapher's office, you would see a pole and all kinds of wires coming in and going out. And they would run this to what we always call a Western Union pegboard. And the purpose of this, you had these little brass pegs that you'd put in, and you could, for example, you could peg the East and the West circuits together bypassing that station. And what that was really handy for was when they had a wire down someplace, the maintenance guy that had to work on that, they had whetstone bridges, and they would work down the line, and they would talk on other wires and tell them to you know, peg east to west directly, bypass your station, or they would say West 14 grounded, and then they could use their resistance things, and they could get, I think it was within less than a half a mile of where the break was. It was really good. But anyway, when they set these circuits up, I think they were using 60 milliamps. In other words, if you had 10 stations between Omaha and Chicago had a battery there, they would add batteries to gain voltage until they had 60 milliamps flowing in the circuit. And that would come into a station and would go through the pegboard and go to, we call them pony relays, electromechanical relays, but the operators out here just call them pony relays. And they were various ohms, but the one I've got is 150 ohms. And the pony relay, the circuit to the coils of the pony relay then went to a key generally. And then I forgot to mention, between the wires coming in went to a fuse block. And these fuses were, I don't know, maybe ½ inch in diameter and maybe 4 or 5 inches long. And I've got one here. I have to set this up so I could get the camera on it one of these days. But
I was going
anyway,
to ask you to do that, but yeah, that's a good idea.
yeah, the current, the 60 milliamps was continually flowing into the station and out of the station and down the line. Now, the pony relay, and he was correct, I always called them Edison cells, but they weren't really Edison cells. They were a cell, but I think I can show you that. I have some of these. Now, this copper plates are in the wrong place, but they had crow's foot and a copper plate, and then the copper sulfite, which we call blue vitriol. And they'd fill these up with waters, and he's correct, they'd generate, I don't know, at least 1.2 volts. And these were used for the station circuit. And the sounder that I have is only a 4 ohm sounder. So your batteries were not not a lot of oomph to them. And so thus the sounders they made were low ohms to use low current. And one of the things the operators had to do then, one of their jobs was every so often you had to either add copper sulfate or add some water, or you had to take them apart and clean them all out and recharge them, so to speak. So anyway, there's quite a bit of stuff that can be done that way, and I've got all the equipment to do this for real, and indeed. Now, like Cleelm.
I'm not hearing your
Yep.
sounder, or your key.
The other thing that somebody might be able to do is and that would be DS, call to the dispatcher. And then I use the letter K because Clear Lake Junction here had the letter K. So anyway, good presentation. A lot more details, and obviously I was exposed to it, and then I've researched it some too. And yes, I do have my amateur extra in the good old days where I had to pass 20. Can I do it today? No, but I can really work and get 15 on the international still. And yes, I should do better.
Thank you, Dave. That was really great. Great footnote.
Yeah, that was very interesting. Now, what I need to know though, Doug and Dave, is using a Velvet versus a Prince Albert, does that give it like a little bit different of an accent?
You have to ask the old timers. I'm too young.
No, but it tells you which operator was the senior operator at the station, probably, whatever he smoked.
There you go. This has been, the questions today are really good. Now, I got a question for Doug. What is ARRL, amateur radio?
Well, it's the American Radio Relay League, founded by Hiram Percy Maxim in 1914. Maxim invented the silencer, and his dad invented the Maxim machine gun. What do you know? One contributed very much. Well, let's just leave it at that.
Yeah, I had one further point.
Yeah, Dave, go ahead.
And it's about something that I would really love to have somebody explain to me how it worked. But that's what the dispatchers did with the information. And what I know is they had a sheet in front of them. And I believe on the left axis were the time 24 hours in a day. And along the bottom was all the station stops. And then as the dispatchers would get the OS reports, they would plot lines. And when you look at the lines moving east to west or west to east, then you can see where they're starting to come together and you could decide where to have a meet.
That's beyond my pay grade.
Well,
And
you know,
I believe that that ends up becoming a planning tool for scheduling operations, and you know, guys that actually know about that stuff, like maybe Ken Iverson, AB7X. Do you have anything sort of to add on that in all your travails?
Sure, I can. What you just described is called a meet pass planner, and I think the Europeans actually use that in their dispatching. I had kind of a discussion with one of the Europeans at the NPRHA here last September. But what we used, and I'm a former train dispatcher. There's a number of us on here today. Ed Burnson, for example. But the train sheet
was with us for a while. Yeah, well, keep going, Ken.
basically a grid, and it was not unlike an Excel spreadsheet. And in the middle of the train sheet was a listing of the stations. So, for example, on the double track North Territory at the Tacoma office, you'd start out with Seattle, Argo, on to Auburn, Sumner, Puyallup, Reservation, and at the bottom would be Tacoma. And to the right would be east trains, I think, and to the left would be the westbound trains, each of which had its own column. And as a train was called on duty, information was relayed to the train dispatcher, conductor, engineer, locomotives, etc. And then as the train progressed up and down the line, depending on the direction, and the operators would report the passing times through the OSs as has been described. The train dispatcher would record that in the cell that intersected the station with the train. It was quite a system, and those train sheets could be as much as like 6 feet long. They were made out of pretty heavy paper because you had to kind of flip them back and forth a lot, especially on the afternoon shift where you're starting to get on the far right and the far left, and you're getting trains reported in both directions, and you had to flip that thing back and forth quite a bit. So I hope that describes it enough to get an idea what we did.
So that was great, Ken. Now, Ken, you started, what year did you start making? I'm trying to remember the year you started with the railroad.
Well, 69, but that was with the signal crew. I hardly really count that. That lasted 2 weeks until I got laid off. But the following year, 1970, I had been kind of trying to get hired on as a telegrapher, because I found that craft really interested me more than the signal department did. And I was going to Central Washington at the time in my senior year, and I got called out of a physics class in May of 1970, and they asked me, you want to go work second trick Cle Elum? And sure did. So finished out May and the first part of June, and then went to Yakima. And a little stint back to grad school, which I realized wasn't as much fun as the railroad was. And in 71, full-time as a telegrapher, and then eventually promoted to train dispatcher in 71. And the rest, as they say, is history.
Okay. Now, Gary's got his hand up, but I just want to ask Ken, so then by starting in 69, 70, you did not need to learn Morse code, did you?
I think I was the first telegrapher hired out of the Tacoma office that was not required to demonstrate a proficiency in Morse code. And I don't particularly like it, and stay away from it as much as possible. I belong to the West Seattle Amateur Radio Club and get razzed a lot for that. But I think it was mentioned about to get the amateur extra license back in the code requirement days required 20 words a minute. I could never get there. I never got there. And I basically barely passed the 13 word a minute requirement to get a general. And actually I jumped from general to advanced class right there immediately. But I'm proud to have an amateur extra license now, but no code requirement got me through the gate.
There you go. Very good answer. Very good answer. Now, Gary Tarbox has his hand up, and then, Mark, use that question mark, or you'll go after Gary. Okay, Gary, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that PNRA has one of the largest collections of train sheets, GNNP, Milwaukee and Pacific Coast train sheets that exist. And we're probably somewhere around 22,000 such sheets. They're usually grouped in 1 month at a time. So you get 30 sheets together. So you can actually see the flow of trains back and forth. And so it's what Ken was really discussing was the train sheets. If anybody's interested in that, we do have some of them online on the NP site.
Very good. And Mark Orleski, did you have a question or a comment? Mark, go ahead, please.
Well, I'd just like to share something. I'd like to share an artifact that we have here. I don't know if let's see.
Hold it right in front of your face.
This is a
We
Put it in
can't
front
see
of your
it.
face.
Hold it in front of your face.
okay. This is
Yeah.
known as a key on board. It's a practice key. We have the key over here, and it's the relay on the same board. And what it is it's used to it's used to practice, and you get immediate feedback on what you're doing when you press the key. And it was made by Brunel. And this is Cleellum, for example, CM. And normally it would take a battery, but a treasured member of the Morris Telegraph Club, Bud Emmons, provided a way to connect this to wall current or house current. So, but this is just an example of a practice key used for those novice operators trying to get feedback on that.
Thank you,
on
Mark.
how to use the
Mark,
telegraph.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
You worked for the Union Pacific, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
And weren't you a telegrapher?
Well, the title was telegrapher, and that's how you pronounce, and that's how we pronounce it, telegrapher. But it also kind of came with several other different names: telegrapher, powerman, leverman. Levers being the levers you pull to set switches and signals at an interlocking tower or a junction. And the last was operator or train order operator. And I hired out in 1979, just the last half year that the Milwaukee Road was in operation. And at Union Pacific, I worked at Argo and Black Ridge.
So you never had, but starting in 1979, you didn't need to learn Morse code. Well, we'll never know the answer to that one. So hopefully Mark will come back. This has just been a really interesting conversation, and we've had some great questions in our chat and discussion today. This is just a lot of fun. But I do have a Doug Oakman story that I do want to share with the group before we bid adieu for this week. And that was early November, and Frank Zellerhoff and I came up to Cleellum, and Frank gave a presentation to a group of Puget Power interns. They were volunteers that worked at the wind farm somewhere around there. And as they're senior project at Central Washington University, they went on a tour. And so while Frank was explaining the wild and wacky world of electrical substations, I was back over in the depot and these students came back. And here's Professor Oakman, just in his element. You know, Doug was a college professor at Pacific Lutheran University. And here he is talking to these, you know, like juniors and seniors in college, and he's showing them how to use Morse code to type their names. And it was one of the first times that Doug, that might have been the first time I ever met you. And I just thought, man, this guy, he can connect with this college age group. And I was so impressed by that. And it was just so much fun watching these kids, you know, tapping away at this stuff. And he was so patient in explaining. It was really a lot of fun. And I just wanted to share that fond memory of I think probably one of our first encounters. So
I'd like to thank everybody for your generous listening. And the students were very happy when I retired.
all right, so we are getting to the bottom of the hour here, and I'm gonna go around the room. Brian, you've been on and off the call today. Anything you want to add before we wrap up today? You're good. Okay, very good. And you know, like I say, I think, you know, I hate to make these kinds of comments, but I think it was an electrifying program today, folks. I mean, you know, it was a lot of fun. We tapped our way around a bunch of different issues, and I certainly know a lot more about Morse code than I did before. So otherwise, I'm going to tell you that in 2 weeks, we'll be getting back together again, and PNRA Tacoma chapter NRHS favorite Mike Bergman will be talking about the streetcars of West Seattle. So if I don't hear anything more from our audience, I'm going to say thanks everybody. Thanks everyone very much for being here. See if I can say that all at once in a complete sentence. And I look forward to seeing all of us and maybe a few more at our next episode in a couple of weeks. So thanks everybody, and bye for now. Bye, Jack. Have a good day, Jack. We'll talk to you soon. Okay. Hey, Wayne, do you want to hang around for a second afterwards for a sec? So.
Thanks again.
Thanks, Doug. You were great. Really appreciate it. And I'll check back with you end of February. How's that sound?
I'll be happy to hear from you.
That'll be great. We're going to go see Russell Holter, and we're going to talk about the third application of the law. Or something.
You could get an earful.
I can imagine. So, so Wayne, I'm working on this seminar, and you know, are you going to be in that number when the Saints come marching in?
As in scans of Seattle North Coast stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it's like time is of that. I mean, it's sink or swim time on this thing.
Yeah, and I did find my movie file for John Kirkland's Port Townsend delivering the Whitcomb. So there's the so what I'm going to do is send you a flash drive with this and the stuff I've scanned to you.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah, time is of the essence. I need to get this stuff.
Okay.
Because
today's Wednesday, so maybe maybe I might get it done by Saturday.
Yeah, I got to run up and see Dale tomorrow, and then
we're
going up to swim on Tuesday.
Okay.
And you know, and like I say, we're getting within 30 days, so I like to be done at the 30-day mark, and then just tap my foot and enjoy that.
So. Okay, and this movie file, I can't open it on my computer anymore. It's got I guess an Apple movie file or whatever. I'll let you play around with it. Let you.
Oh, okay. I'll do the best. I mean, hardly a technological whiz, but you know, sometimes I can figure out how to muddle my way through things. So.
But I know it ran because this is the one of the ones I ran up at the Milwaukee UP convention back in 2018 there at Olympia. So, but I'll send you that, and I'll send you some of the other Seattle North Coast stuff. So
I really appreciate it, Wayne. So any help is appreciated. As always.
Now that we've got pretty much 5 days of rain starting today, so
Yeah, you guys are getting a little bit of,
More than a little bit. It's just starting in just past a couple hours, so.
oh boy. All right,
Yep.
everybody. Anyway, I'm going to
Okay.
end the meeting now. And thanks, Ed. Thank you, Jack. It's always good seeing you. And take care of you guys. And I'll talk to you all soon. Bye for now.